Hi everyone, just Luke here. Just to let you know, I got a bit overzealous with the truncate silence feature on the intro. So it might get a bit choppy, but you can pretty much work out exactly what we're saying. It just cuts out silences a bit too quickly, but hopefully it's not too bad. But that all stops after the introduction. So as soon as we get into the main show, everything's fine. It's just the intro. But anyway, thanks for your patience and enjoy the show.
I know, I missed the meeting.
No, you didn't miss the meeting. You're extraordinarily late for the meeting. It's still going on.
What are you doing down here?
We took a short break and I came looking for you. What are you doing down here, Mulder?
Having the best damn day of my life. Any moment I'm about to burst into song. Zippity-doo-dah. My waterbed sprung a leak and shorted out my alarm clock. My cell phone got wet and crapped out on me. And the check I wrote my landlord to cover the damages is going to bounce if I don't deposit my pay. You ever had one of those days, Scully?
Since I've been working here? Yeah. When did you get a waterbed, Mulder?
Hello and welcome to Most Unwanted X-Files podcast. I'm Luke, and by Daniel Checkley, my co-host. I couldn't think of an adverb there.
Thank you so much.
I'm forgetting all of my GC English.
This is a great start to the podcast. This is really this is a lively one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got some energy in me now. I've had a Diet Pepsi.
Ooh.
Does it have caffeine in Diet?
Let's check. I think so. I think Diet still has caffeine in it.
Yeah. Because Pepsi... No. I think... Ooh.
Because Pepsi Max doesn't have caffeine, does it? Or no, that's no sugar whatsoever.
What an intro you're getting today, guys, eh?
Hey, this is good. This is good stuff.
Good stuff. We're going to find out the difference between Diet Pepsi and Pepsi Max. What you all come here for, really. Anyway, how have you been since the last recording?
Not so bad. There's no real news, sadly. I can't think of anything that I've really done.
Have you watched, seen, done any? Yeah.
I mean, you know what? I've really got into my sports. So I've not really watched anything. I did watch Squid Game.
Oh, okay.
Which is
the phenomenon.
The phenomenon that took over the world. I was very late to it.
Yeah.
I think I just zoned out for a weekend and I came back and everyone had seen it. And I was like, okay. I tell you what the problem with Squid Game is. Mm-hmm. I actually really enjoy it. I think it's a very good show.
Yeah.
And it's very different. And I think it's I'm glad that it's took off the way it has because I think it's a great advert for Korean cinema or Korean sort of filmmaking or TV making in general. Because my God, if you before Squid Game, if you're not up on how good media is coming out of Korea, like there are some of the best directors coming out.
I mean, literally the Oscar winners.
Yeah, it's phenomenal how some of these are radar really, and so it's really good that the spotlight's being put on them, and it's definitely a good showcase for that. Tell you the problem with Squid Game now, the memes, because I imagine I'd have enjoyed it a lot more if I didn't know every single game they played.
Yeah.
In Squid Game before I watched
it happened. Yeah.
Which I understand, but I'm very much I'm not anti-spoiler. Like for me, spoilers are like a part of something. I can usually avoid things. I can, and usually I think if you get spoiled, more often than not, you're looking to be spoiled as well. Do you know what I mean? Like unless someone's a dick, and comes out and says, "Oh, by the way, Bruce Willis was a ghost all along." Do you know what I mean?
To know that.
But yeah, unless someone's actively coming out and tell you, usually it's not that difficult.
It's like the people who have had the spoil. The worst is when it's they found out a spoiler to something that they don't care about. I remember famously somebody found out the ending to not the last Harry Potter book, but the one before.
Yeah.
I won't say just in case, but the infamous ending to that. It got leaked online. People had found a transcript or something and were shouting at people who were waiting in the queue to buy the book.
Now that's horrendous.
It's just really
There's
shitty.
no need for that at all.
Yeah.
But saying that, I don't think that people shouldn't be able to discuss what they like.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you like something, go and watch it and you'll blah, blah. That being said, I know everything that happens in Squid Game. I'm watching it, I'm like halfway through,
Yeah.
and I know every game that's being... And it does take some of the excitement away, and I do kind of wish the memes had just been sort of pulled back a little
Yeah,
bit.
I've got to be honest. I watched the first episode and I wasn't captivated to watch the rest. Same reason. I kind of felt like I knew the exact story based off what other people had said.
It's true. It's true. But, you know, I've, as I say, I'm halfway through at the moment. I have enjoyed the performances, I've enjoyed the acting, and but what I would say is, fucking, if you even slightly enjoy Korean cinema, it's the place to be right now. My God, there's some really TV shows out of that.
Even older ones as well.
Yeah. Honestly, it's gone under the radar. It has gone under the radar.
I always say one of my favourite films, like, period, is... my favourite films, period. Old Boy. I fucking love Old Boy. It's like one of my favourites.
I do, and I, again, at the risk of sounding mega pretentious, I do kind of sort of consider myself like a cinemaphile almost. Like, I do enjoy, like, not even just like watching films, but like studying and understanding like different time periods of films. And it is very interesting to see how certain regions or countries have certain like boons like for 10 years or so like that, where they'll produce some like amazing stuff, which is why this Korea thing's so exciting, because you have got this sort of, we're in the middle of it now, you can jump on board with it. Like, one of my favourites is the French extremist movement in the 90s, and some of the films in there, no one, like, it's never mainstream.
No,
but like,
definitely not.
films like Irreversible,
especially with some of them, there's
they are definitely like, not PG, let's say, for example, but films like Irreversible and La Haine are some of my favourite films. And I find that fascinating, how you do get like these sort of like real pop moments in different parts of the world. And all it takes is sort of like just looking past Hollywood a little bit, I suppose.
That's the thing as well. I think that I'm long into this conversation, but but it's the good thing about like seeing cinema from like different parts of the world as well, because their way of storytelling.
Yes,
for everything I love about Hollywood, it has quite a set formula in how to make a film.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
Whereas if you go to somewhere like Korea or Japan, their way of storytelling is, don't get me wrong, there's some that are like quite Hollywoodized, I guess. But their way of telling a story is very different, I find. It's
almost like you get an interesting dynamic when people other than old white men make films.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe you'll have a different perspective on your films. But like you said, this chat is going on a little bit long. Should we get back to the Diet Pepsi chat? Or
well, maybe we should. Do you know what? Maybe we should find out if we're kind of like Garfield and if we hate Mondays.
Oh, God. It's not even relevant. Not even relevant.
Let's call Monday. It is relevant. So this episode is entitled Monday. It's episode 14 of Series 6. It was directed by Kim Newman, written by Vince Gilligan and John Chabad, and the original air date was February the 28th, 1999. Before we come into this episode, I think I texted you yesterday saying that I'm not sure if this will be the easiest or the hardest episode to repeat.
Yeah, I think this is going to be fairly easy to review, to be honest.
Yeah, with my notes, probably.
We have got a classic time loop episode.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I'm overtaking the hosting duties, but before we start, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about time loops?
I like any type of story like that if it's told well. Like so, there's so obviously Groundhog Day is like sort of the obvious comparison, but I've got a bit of a bugbear with that.
Okay.
I hate when there's a time loop film and somebody just calls it, they'll instantly say, oh, it's exactly like Groundhog Day. And it's like, I mean, there's other films that do time loops.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Like everyone is always straight in. It's a good film. Don't get me wrong. I like it. But every time there's a time loop thing, it's like, oh, it's Groundhog Day. And it's like,
it's kind of, I suppose Groundhog Day has become the term for it though, hasn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That when that what was it called, Happy Death Day? I've never watched it, but like when that came out, everyone was like, "Oh, it's Groundhog Day, the horror film," and it's like, yeah. Or you could just say the horror film time loop. I don't know.
I've always been fascinated. I love these type of films, and I don't know why. It's a genre in its own right.
Yeah.
That really fascinates me because I just think there's so many things to explore. One of my favourite shows from a couple of years ago was Russian Doll.
Yeah, I've
which
heard
was
about that one.
so good. Like if no one's watched that, definitely give it a shot. It's one season's worth. It's phenomenal.
It took me forever to realise that was the woman from American Pie.
It is Natasha Lyonne. yeah. She's excellent in it. You had Palm Springs with.
I want to watch that.
That's really good as well. And then you've got others like, you know what? It is just like an action film. I think it's called Edge of Tomorrow, is it?
Oh, the Tom Cruise one.
Tom Cruise one. Yeah. And it is like an action film.
Yeah.
But you put a time loop in it, and it's an interesting action film. Do you know what I mean?
It's the Groundhog Day of War.
There is just something about time loop film.
Yeah.
I think what it is, from a real childlike perspective, it gets my mind racing of like, what would I do in this situation?
I think everyone has had that, if you've watched Groundhog Day, you think, how would I approach this same day over and over again?
Which is really, it's a childlike way to watch a film, but having a genre that unlocks that in me, I think that's great. I think if I could put on a film and just be instantly like, miss half the film because I'm imagining what my life would be like in this situation. That's good. That's a good genre. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know this as well? Before we get into the episode, I feel like this episode has got a very realistic portrayal of what you would actually be like if you were forced to live through this. You'd be like absolutely miserable.
I remember watching Palm Springs, and I was real tangent straight off the bat. I remember getting so far down this rabbit hole of like what I would do in this situation. And I was thinking, I even got to the point where I was like, I wouldn't be able to play video games.
Yeah, because you'd have to keep resetting
it. And then I was like, well, I'd have to play video games. That are like,
I would have played games.
But that's how far deep down the rabbit hole I got. I was like, well, I'd have to play games where there's like, I can level pick or something along them lines. Or I would have to like, because the thing is, like, you could travel, but you'd always end up going back to where you go.
You'd have to play that, like, so there's two, again, tangent. You'd have to play either Returnal or Deathloop. They're quite new games where Deathloop actually be perfect. The concept is you keep reliving the same day over and over again.
In a time loop?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'll just leave it with that. You should probably play that, actually, now talking about it.
Probably should. I just think there's something great about something unlocking this whimsical wonder in a 30-year-old guy. Do you know what I mean? I just love it.
But anyway, we will talk about how... what was her name in it? Oh, God, I put it in the notes and everything.
Oh, dear.
Oh, no. What was her name? Pam, was it?
In the next time loop of this, you better get this right.
Pam. Yeah, we'll start again, guys, don't we? So this week... Oh, that would have been a good gimmick. We should have thought of that.
You know what? We'll restart the podcast as soon as we finish.
Yeah, just
get ready. This is going to be a 24-hour special, guys.
But yeah, I do like how in this we just see the realistic portrayal of Pam, who is just not enjoying life.
No,
but yeah.
No.
Right, we might as well get into it, actually.
Let's go for it.
So we start and we see Mulder bleeding out on the floor. And we basically find out that he's been shot. And Scully's sort of tending to him. And we see that they're basically being held up as hostages inside a bank. And Scully is trying to sort of talk to the guy who's got him held hostage, who we find out is called Bernard later on in the episode. And while this is all happening, he also reveals that he's wearing a bomb on his chest. We see outside, like, the police are getting ready to storm in. Skinner is at the scene because he knows that Mulder and Scully are there. I think the initial setup is him turning up to the scene, which I quite found interesting because as soon as he says, 2 of my agents are in there, and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And we see them at the scene. We see Pam. At this point, we don't know who she is, but she tries to interrupt Skinner and tries to get his attention, but he's kind of confused. Doesn't really know who she is. And then we find out that the police are going to storm in. They head into the building, and as soon as the guy sees the guns, he basically activates his bomb vest and kills everybody in the bank. That's the opening of the episode. Strong start.
Yeah, really good start. And I think, we go straight back to like, it goes back in time after this.
Yeah.
I think that's a really clever way of opening the story.
Yeah.
Because you assume it's a normal storytelling mechanic of like, this is the end of the episode. Now we're going to take you back to the beginning and we're going to work our way up to the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But actually, this is just another time loop. This is just one of, probably not the first. This is probably like the 50th time loop of the...
I was going to say, she even mentions at one point, this is like a 50th time.
And she knows Skinner. She knows Skinner's name.
Yeah.
So, this is... I thought it was a very interesting way of doing it. Obviously, my interest hadn't been completely piqued at this point because I didn't know it was a time loop. But I thought it was an interesting one for sure.
And then at some point you were like, I am fully into this episode.
I feel like it's gone too weird now. I feel like I'm a time loop freak and everyone's like, oh...
You're going to have time loop fetish.
Why is he fetishizing this time loop so much?
I really want to live the day over and over again.
Over and over and over. Books would be really good in time loop.
Yeah, because there's no like reset point because you can just
You can just open the page when you
Wow, you
when
really
you wake up.
thought about this a lot.
Like a library. You could get through every book ever.
You'll be like it sounds like a Twilight Zone episode or something like that. Well, funny thing about that, we'll get to the production notes. So then we see, as you mentioned, we get the intro, and then we see Mulder has woken up, isn't injured, so again, at this point, we don't know. We didn't know it's a time loop, so we thought, oh, this is the beginning of the day. And we see that his waterbed has sprung a leak.
Yeah.
Now,
but first, we see the mirrors on the ceiling. Of course.
Of course, he has them. So I'll recap this scene, but now I've got a very big question to bring up after this. So his waterbed sprung a leak. It's basically shorted out the plug that had his alarm clock, and his phone falls in the water as well. So basically, just his day has gone to crap. He's late. And he also has to call his landlord because it's leaking water down into other apartments, even though he's been told not to have a waterbed. So he's got to pay.
Explicitly told.
Yeah, so he's got to pay for the damages. Now, there's also a bit as well where he goes in the bathroom to go and get I don't even know what he's going in the bathroom for. I can't remember. But as he comes back out, he trips over his shoes. Yeah, brilliant pratfall. Duchovny's really good at doing pratfalls. And we see all this happening. So it didn't dawn on me for a while. I was like, he's got a waterbed. And I was like, hang on a bit. It was the waterbed that other guy who took over his body got. I was like, oh, okay, so that's stayed in place. Now, I remember at the time of that episode, we had a very lengthy discussion on what stays in place in this universe. Oh,
yeah. Well, they do show the waterbed at the end of that episode, I think. Yeah. So we knew that stayed in place, at least to a certain extent. So,
But this is shown as well now that this has all lingered on, from that episode, however many weeks ago that was. So the woman that he slept with must be really pissed off that she's not called her back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fallout from that episode that I didn't think there would be.
Yeah. You could have another whole episode based on things that happened during that and what that means for. Because the thing is, I think they do sort of make vague mention of the fact that Mulder doesn't have a clue where this waterbed came from.
Yeah.
Every time it gets brought up, he kind of just sort of brushes it off because he doesn't know himself.
Which, the first time you sleep on it, you must be like, oh, this isn't my bed. What's happening? But he's just been whatever, I'll keep it. But no, I remember at the time we theorised, what if he kind of had contracted some kind of
it would still be there, if that's the case.
He might not even know that he's got it. Oh my god, there's so many this.
That's the finale. That's the finale of this season.
It'll be an alien one. It's gotta be. While I was watching, I was like, I didn't realise that episode would have such big ramifications for his future.
Mulder's got a bedroom now.
And it's all been completely changed, and he's fine with that, apparently. But anyway, the waterbed's ruined everything. And because of this, he has to go to the bank, because typical Mulder fashion, he hasn't cashed his last check. Yeah. So his check to the landlord will bounce, so he has to go and pay in his work. What would you call it now? His payback, whatever.
Yeah, his wage.
Yeah, so he's got to cash that in. So he goes to the FBI offices where Scully meets him, and he's apparently meant to be joining a meeting, which Scully tells him at the time he's not actually missed it. He's really, really late for it because it seems to be going on forever. I really liked, and I'll bring it up here because it just seems like a good point. I really liked in this episode the themes of like monotony. So, like this meeting that they're in seems to be going on is endless, going on for hours, and they're like, as you can tell from like the way they're acting, they're just completely bored by this meeting about like crime figures. I love how an explosion in a bank is as boring to Pam.
That is, I've not even thought about that. That's such a good point. It compares, doesn't it?
Because there's points where she's sat in the car going, oh, so she's literally reciting what people are saying, like, oh, this again, like, and it's funny how this, all for the wrong reasons, this incredibly exciting event is really, really boring because she's doing it over and over again, and it's funny how like that is the same as a really boring meeting. That you're
just doing the same thing over and over again in your job.
Again, that's why I find it quite grounded in its portrayal of like a time loop, because if you have to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, because in her situation she can't just go, I'm gonna go read a book, because like we said, she's been like dragged along by her like maniac boyfriend to rob a bank. She can't get out of it, so she's having to relive these events over and over and over and over and over again. So I really enjoyed this like sort of theme to the episode, if that's what they were going for anyway.
No, I think that's definitely purposeful, to be honest. I thought that's a really good point.
But so he drops in to pick up his check and then goes to the bank where he has to go and cash it in. And we see this scene basically replaying itself now, or the starts of this scene happening, because we see Bernard pull up with Pam in the car.
This is where it sort of surprised me, not knowing it was a timely plot film, or episode, should I say. Because I was like, oh, we're here already? Because where do you go from a bank exploding? You know what I mean? I didn't have a clue, like, how are we here already?
I was going to say, this was like 5 minutes into So Bernard arrives at the bank with his girlfriend Pam, and then we see Mulder in the bank trying to cash his check. He sees Bernard looking nervous as he's I don't know, he's kind of like just writing out what he's going to say, isn't he? And again, I think
it's a note to hand to the cashier.
Yeah,
I mean, which makes no sense because he starts shouting.
I was going to say, he just pulled. I thought he was like writing out what he was going to say because he wasn't sure. I don't know if he was like nervous or something.
I think it's another measure in place, because every reiteration, it's worded slightly different.
Yeah.
So I think it's just. I mean, there's a lot of these points throughout the sequence. Where things happen in a slightly different way. And I think it's just another point to whether the overarching question, which is, are you in control of your own fate, or is it all pre-designed? And so I think less, it's not really an important part. It's just another way to show that every time he goes into this bank, something's slightly different.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think one note says this is a robbery, and another note says this is a stick-up and stuff like that. It's very slightly different.
There's always slight different. And again, that's kind of why this episode might be easy or hard to recap, because there's like slight variations each time. But
I do not think for a second people are going to be interested in us.
We're going to recap every time
the same scene over and over and over again.
Well, we're going to find it. Don't do that.
Strap in, guys.
So we see this sort of bank robbery taking place now. He's looking nervous, but he eventually pulls his gun, and we see what happened in the intro play out. He tells everybody to get on the floor, and this is when the teller behind the counter sets off the alarm. Has he already shot Mulder at this point? I don't know if he has.
No,
it's when Scully comes in.
So like Scully comes in to fetch Mulder later on in the episode, and because Mulder tries to tell him to lock the doors to sort of save Scully,
and then tries to pull his gun out, doesn't he? I remember it.
And
now.
then they fight.
It's kind of hard to remember the exact variations.
Come on, Luke, you've got to really do better here.
I know. I should.
It's not like you've watched this scene 5 different times, all with different ways. Remember exactly the way it happened in each sequence.
I feel like I am robbing the bank at the moment. So as you mentioned, Scully arrives, and this ends up with Mulder being shot, which is what we'd seen. Scully tries to help Mulder and stop him from dying. Basically, tries to talk him down to say that we need to get him help because he's going to die, bleed out here. Typical kind of like negotiator kind of things. So yeah, this is when the police rush the building, and we basically see the loop end where he detonates his bomb and everybody dies again.
Yeah, it's another interesting point. I hadn't thought about this really until your point about the mundaneness of it all. Scully's what Scully says to him at the end of each loop, which is, you're in control. Like, you're in control of the situation. It doesn't have to end like this. And again, that sort of diverts back to the idea of, are you in control of your life? Is this a preordained plan, or do you have some control? Because when you think about it, it's when Pam finally decides that she's in control that the loop ends. So that's an interesting thought as well, that constant, like, you're in control of the situation, that line can be taken a lot of different ways. There's like, they have conversation about that in the office as well at one point, don't they, about about what's it called, fate or destiny and stuff like that. But it's I think that's another one of the themes, like you said, that how much control you have. So we see this detonation happen, and then we see suddenly it all starts again. We see Mulder wake up, waterbed sprung a leak, and this is where the sort of, I guess, the easiness of covering this is we basically get so many loops of this. But each time it loops, there's always differences. And I'm not going to go over every difference because some of them are quite minor. So in one, he trips over the shoes in a different way. I did like how they did that though, because it comes up to him and you're like, oh, he's going to trip over the shoe, but he steps over it, and then we see him go backwards and fall backwards over it. They make it. It's almost comical in the way they do it, but they make it very clear that there are slight subtle differences in each one. And this opening scene is very important for that because because it was like they're almost like slapstick moments, but because they are so like dramatic, you remember them, they stick out in your mind, and so when it doesn't happen that time, you're like, oh, this is different. Something is different here, and then it makes you look out for the notes. It makes you look out for the difference in Pam pulling up. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
If you didn't have that initial scene with those obvious sort of like slapstick falling over moments, as funny as it is and as comical as it is, it gives you that reason to look out for differences in each iteration. And again, some of them are minor, like it's literally the same scene, but they'll say different ways of doing it, which again is just another technique to try and keep it interesting as well. Because if we saw the exact same scene every time, I think you'd just be a bit like, especially if you knew it was the same scene or something repeating. But you can tell at least with this that everything is different in some way, shape, or form. But so this is where we realise that it's a time loop, that stuff is basically this core event is sort of repeating. And no one seems to be in on it. Mulder's definitely not in on it. Scully's not. The only person who is aware of what is going on is Pam. We see her, I think at one point she tries to call the police. There's another instance later on where she tries to go to the actual X-Files office and try, but she's constantly trying to change or make variations to the day to try and stop what's going to happen at the end of it. And so I think again it's very awkward to talk about this because I know we did speak off air and it was like we just don't want to do this sequentially.
It's difficult.
So we are going to talk about the episode as a whole, which is very new for us, so it's going to be a little bit all over the place. But I think one of the key things is she does mention that Mulder, on this iteration, day after day, there has been moments when Mulder looks at her and like recognizes her. And so there is this thing that there is a chance that Mulder knows or is capable of figuring this out of what's happening, which is why she tends to sort of stick to them and trying to ask them for help.
There's points as well where I feel like that Skinner has some kind of recollection, but it's not as it's not as strong as Mulder. Also probably
it's like that deja vu type feeling instead.
He's like, do I know you from somewhere or something like that? It's not like he's not like dismissive of it. He's kind of like, who are you? Like
you look familiar.
Yeah, there's something that's like triggering his memory, I guess.
Yeah,
but yeah, we're not sure.
And there's like those conversations between Mulder and Scully about like you said, about whether this is fate or whether, because Mulder just says, he literally says, do you ever feel like you just starting the same day over and over again because it's going so badly?
Yeah.
And yeah, they do talk about like Scully believes that there is, she does believe in sort of fate she talks about some people believing that there's a fate and that you just go down a certain path. And Mulder doesn't believe that because there's too many variables and every choice you make every day, whether it's to tie your laces or to tuck your laces into your shoes or whatever, every little choice branches out and makes a new, different reality, which is always fascinating. I can imagine as a writer of this episode, it's a nightmare because as soon as you start messing with time in any episode, it's a logistical nightmare because there's no way you can tie it all back up.
Yeah. And especially with this one where, it is the same version of events, but each one is slightly different.
Yes.
So it's tracking all those. But, I'll go through, again, I'm not going to run through scene by scene because there's just no point in doing that, but I'll just carry on doing a sort of rundown of the episode. As we mentioned, Pam is trying to stop this, so she tries to stop them entering the bank by, delaying them, or... I can't even remember some of the other things she tries to stop. She tries to alert Skinner, as we'd seen.
Yeah.
But none of this seems to work. And even when she's having a chat with Mulder later on, to try and again trigger his memory, she kind of implies that she's been through this at least 50 times. Because I think he said, I can't remember the exact line, but he said something about this being the 51st time that she's got to explain it to him.
The interesting thing is as well, again, it's just a small point, it doesn't really have much of an effect on the episode, but she does mention to him that every time he goes into the bank, this happens.
Yeah.
The implication there is he always goes into the bank, which I think says a lot about Mulder's character as well.
Yeah.
Because out of 50 scenarios, no matter how many times he's told it's dangerous, no matter how many times he's told his life may be at risk, he will still go into that bank 50 times, which I think is a really interesting point. Mm-hmm. And I think it says a lot about Mulder that he still goes in. He still, no matter what happens, no matter how many walls are put in front of him, if there's something that needs to be put right, he walks through that door.
It's a very heroic trait, isn't it? Because it's he's not doing it out of belligerence. He's doing it because... Well, at one point he's told that there's somebody with a gun in there, and he's like, "Well, I've got to go and stop them."
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's not afraid to do that. So it's as you said, it shows off his character as the hero of the piece, I guess.
Yeah.
So one thing I did think as well. So there's all these subtle changes which we won't go over. The conversations are worded differently, but every time the loop finishes, it always ends the same way. Bernard will detonate the bomb. And everybody dies, which made me think, do they all die in agony every day? I mean, do they live that?
That's an interesting one, isn't it? When you start talking about actual pain and whether do you wake up the next day and if you forget about the pain instantly, does it ever exist?
I was going to say, if it's reset, did it even happen in the first place? You know what I mean? It's a weird one, but It's one of those things that I just thought, I was like, that doesn't seem good if you're going to die every day.
I mean, I would imagine for the people in the bank it's instantaneous, so that's one good thing.
I guess so, yeah. We just keep seeing this time loop repeat, basically. But every time that Pam sort of has a conversation with Mulder, there seems to be more recollection. There's at one point where even he walks past and goes to her specifically and do I know you from somewhere?
Yeah.
So we're sort of seeing that there's more recollection in there.
And there's the one part as well, which is really interesting, where Mulder kind of figures it out as the day progresses.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he said. Does he say there's a bomb?
Yeah, so it's basically he realizes that he's got a bomb, and then it's kind of like he realizes that I've been through this, I've done this before, and he just keeps repeating to himself he's got a bomb.
As if to remind himself in the next day,
Yeah. So then again, this leads into the final iteration. I told you it'd be a quick one. So in the final sort of loop that we see Mulder doing this. He's kind of like repeating the phrase. And then, we go into the next loop. He carries on about his day and then eventually ends up in the bank. And it's like he's figuring it out as he's going. And he starts actually saying that he's got a bomb when he kind of triggers to him. And this is when he calls Scully to basically help him through this.
Yes.
And he goes up to Bernard straight away. He doesn't even wait for him to initiate the robbery.
Yeah. He takes control of the situation.
Exactly. Again, that control kind of thing that you're talking about.
Being in control of your own destiny.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, especially when you go back through the episode, there's a lot of little points like that where you're like, oh, this actually, it's a little bit deeper than it first appears.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot more going on. It's one of those where it's like, I imagine this would benefit repeat viewing.
Yes, for sure.
Like,
as do most times with films, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, so he now knows that Bernard's going to rob the bank. He goes up to him straight away. Again, he tells him he's in control, gives him the gun. And this is where we start seeing things massively change. Mm-hmm. So Scully is basically told to collect Pam and bring her into the situation. So straight away that's changing. She's never gone in the bank before, which is, again, she's always saying that Mulder always goes into the bank. She's never gone into the bank.
And the fact that he remembers her name as well shows that, like, he is sort of starting to figure out and remember things from previous iterations. Yeah,
exactly. So he brings him into the bank, and with this and having Pam there and Mulder being able to talk to him more, he kind of convinces Bernard at this point, just leave it. You don't want to do this, and to actually just go. And you can actually see him like contemplating this. It does feel like he's probably thinking, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, and they're going to leave it. But it's at this point, I think the clerk's already triggered the alarm again. And I can't remember exactly. I think there is something where, the alarm's triggered. But this is where they hear a police siren. And this is where he realizes that he may be being set up or something like that. And he tries to, at this point, shoot Mulder, just completing this loop again where he'd get shot and the bomb would go off. But Pam actually jumps in front of him, takes the bullet, and she starts lying there, dying. Bernard drops to his knees and he's completely out of it.
Immediately arrested by Mulder as well.
He realises what he's done. And when Mulder goes to speak to Pam, she also says, she said this never happened before. Yeah. And she's realising that maybe she was the one who needed to end the loop, I guess. Yeah. Bernard gives himself up. He's arrested, as you said. The bomb doesn't go off. And then we see what we think is the repeat of the loop. Or the setup is that it's the repeat of the loop, but it's not. We see that it's the next day. It's now Tuesday. And Mulder still needs to get in his report that he didn't do yesterday. No, it's the report on what happened, because Scully is confused as to how he knew all this.
Because it's a funny one, because Mulder and us as the audience have been privy to all the iterations, but nobody else has. So, even though it's been a whole episode's worth, Scully and Skinner don't have a clue what's gone on yesterday. All they know is Mulder made a load of weird demands. And someone got shot in the bank, and that was it.
Yeah, and stopped a bomb going off. Miraculously.
Without knowing how he even knew that,
and that's pretty much the end of the episode. Like, again, it's a very easy one to cover because of the loop situation. But yeah, what did you think of this episode? Is there anything else that you want to talk about on it? Or
I really enjoyed this. I think this was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think this would have been a great episode to go after Two Fathers, One Son.
Yeah, it's like a breakup of what's it?
Yeah. I think this would have been perfect because it is that right amount of like fun, but very specific. I mean, literally. The great thing about this episode is it's like a full episode that happens over the course. If you take all the time
Literally,
out of it, it's an hour's worth. It's an hour in the day of, you know
yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And so the repercussions aren't, you don't need repercussions.
Yeah.
It literally is just an hour of Mulder doing paperwork,
Yeah.
if not for this time loop. I think what you've said is very true in the sense of, I think repeat viewings definitely would be interesting for this episode as well, because I think there's a lot of things that even we haven't picked up on. But even the things that we have, I think it's great. I think it's cool to have something like this where you can play with it a little bit and sort of show. And I think the overall message of, is it all preordained? Do you have any control, or is what happens in your day-to-day life written for you, and it's the way it's going to be from the day you were born to the day you die? You've got that thing. And I think knowing that that's not the case, because obviously it wasn't the case for Pam, I think it says a lot about Mulder as a person, which I think, again, it's not the main point of the episode, but I think you can take that from that. And I thought it was just a really fun, really interesting episode.
I think that theme as well, and this is probably like, if we had a bingo card for our episodes, this one would definitely be on it. As we're big Lost fans.
Oh, dude. We've got to stop mentioning Lost.
Yeah.
We should have just bit the bullet and done a Lost podcast.
No, we can't. But
we're 6 seasons in. Next week, episode 1. See you Lost.
Yeah. But like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's such a big part of that, like that, like fate versus choice.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting sort of like philosophical debate. And it's really well encapsulated in this episode. It's just because, like I said, ultimately you have the conversation that Mulder and Scully have, and the episode as a whole, and seeing the changes that they make, and like talking about control. But it's just a really good sort of like bite-sized chunk of that kind of like debate, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. But this is what I was trying to say. Imagine this episode, and again, it is afterwards. Imagine this episode comes directly after Two Fathers, One Son, right? Yeah. So you're 6.5 seasons in, and you've watched this story of Mulder, who is investigating everything going on around him without his control. His whole life, people have been meddling with and playing with. And
I hadn't thought of that, you know.
Yeah, and then you get this big mythology lore episode explaining everything of what's happened over the entirety of Mulder's life. And then you get an episode with a subtle story of saying, is this all just meant to happen to you? Is this, are you part of this? Or do you have control over what's about to happen? Even if it's just a slight bit of control, but does that slight bit change the course of history? And for Mulder, I think it's so important that, yes, it does. He needs to know that. He needs to know that despite it seemingly being completely out of his control, his life, he's always just turns up to find out about it and never to do anything about it. This episode of him going, oh no, well, I do actually have some control, and seeing a person like Pam, who, despite it being her ultimate demise, stops something happening. In fact, saves a whole bank full of people
by taking control.
Taking control of the of her actions.
Yeah,
I think, again, I'm probably looking way too deep into it, but I think this episode actually encourages that. Yeah, and I think it's a perfect placement for it. Is what I'm trying to say at this point in Mulder's life.
That's the thing, like with how One Son ended, with like the complete change of everything, and as you said, it would have suited. But I hadn't even thought of that. I thought you were literally just saying, I didn't like the last episode. I'd rather a better episode.
That too. But also, I do think this has the right amount of whimsy, but also like gives you a good idea of like more to delve into, and it tells like a deeper story if you want that. Yeah. And I think it could have been a perfect episode to go directly afterwards. I really do.
Theming wise, no, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean,
let's be honest, it doesn't make that much of a difference that it was 1 week after the next episode, so it's still fine, the placement of it. Great episode. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and like I said, it dawned on me like halfway through the episode about this like story of like tediousness, and I just really like that. Like I said, it just, I don't know if that's what they meant, but yeah, I just thought it was really interesting to get this. Like I said, it's not for the best reasons, but a bomb going off is quite an exciting event. To have that be so mundane to somebody, it's just really interesting.
But again, it shows you that parallel, doesn't it, of the tedious everyday of Scully, and it does show you that parallel of what's so different of this time loop bank storyline or Mulder's life in general of just like having to go through the motions to actually get what he wants.
I just remembered a quote in there as well, and it's like, again, it's sort of hinting at this, that they do the same thing over and over again. There's a point where, because I've noted down some of the interesting quotes, there's a point where like Mulder asks if she can cover for him, and she says, "When do I not?" Like, she always does this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just subtle stuff like that like now we're talking about it. I'm like, but shit, yeah, that's like meant as this like recurring thing that they do. But this episode was really good.
Yeah. And it's always good, even taking away, like not diving into like the sort of the themes and what we thought about the episode. It's always good to see a passion project like this, because you know that I'm not sure who wrote this one.
Vince Gilligan. Josh Shaban, I think. Yeah, I'll score.
I mean, we all know how good they are.
Yeah.
And you can tell that through episodes like this, because the amount of thought and detail that has to go into it, how the storyboards alone must be complicated as.
Yeah.
So it's always cool to sort of see a vision like that come to fruition.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like, this isn't Edge of Tomorrow. This isn't like big giant fighting robots. This is, apart from the explosion, it's a mundane day-to-day thing, and it still worked because of the amount of effort they put into it. I thought it was great.
Luke's production notes.
This episode was written under extreme pressure during the show's brief Christmas hiatus. It has been stylistically compared to the comedy film Groundhog Day. Vince Gilligan and John Shaban, the writers of the episode, however, credit an episode of The Twilight Zone entitled Shadow Play. Gilligan later noted, "The funny thing about Monday is people seem to really like it a lot, but people always sort of smiled and said, 'You're sort of ripping off Groundhog Day, aren't you?' And I'd say, 'We're not ripping off Groundhog Day, we're ripping off The Twilight Zone.'"
Yeah. Twilight Zone is one of those things I need to watch more of, but
there's a lot of episodes.
There's a lot of episodes.
It is one of those though where whenever you see like a good film, somebody's like, "Yeah, I saw that." Like Us. After I finished Us, Jordan Peele was like, "Yeah, it's just a Twilight Zone episode."
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's because it's it pushed the boundaries so much. I mean, to be honest, some of the episodes aren't that boundary pushing nowadays.
No,
But like back then, it was so boundary pushing that like there's not many horror films that can't say that they took influence from them, because a lot of what they took influence from Twilight Zone. You know what I mean?
Again, it's one of those where maybe that's another show we cover in the future. I don't know, it's a lot of episodes.
We've got, after Lost, we're going to be absolutely spent.
But yeah, it's like one of those as well where it touched on so many like social issues of the time as well, and like again, it's part of the good thing with that is like you can tell an interesting social commentary story with which I think this does a similar kind of thing.
Yeah. I always think about, whenever I think about Twilight Zone, I always think about how much it says about Black Mirror.
Yeah.
As well. And the reason why I say that, I think Black Mirror is a phenomenal show, and for this reason, because now you get people saying, how do I say this? Black Mirror is obviously heavily influenced by Twilight Zone in the way it shows itself.
Yeah.
However, it does it so well that when things happen nowadays, you'll have people saying, it's like an episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah.
And it was always, it's like an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and so I think that's such a huge credit to Black Mirror, because Black Mirror was the first thing to actually be so much of a homage, obviously, but also its own thing.
Yeah.
That it took over that discourse.
It captured like a generation as well. I think it's a generational thing.
Of course it is.
So I reckon there's people now who are like, oh, it's like a Black Mirror episode, who would have, like 20 years ago, it's like a Twilight Zone episode, because that would have been what you've watched.
Really interesting to sort of. It makes me wonder how many horror films in 20 years' time will be like heavily influenced by Black Mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Or in 50 years' time, there'll be somebody going, "Oh, it's like a Blue Kazoo episode." Trying to think of it.
No, that's the natural progression. Twilight Zone, Black Mirror, Blue Kazoo.
I was trying to think of any. Do you know? You just tried to know any color and any object just to sound similar.
And you landed on kazoo. Any object in the world.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? Kazoo.
Well, when we do our Twilight episodes rundown, the Blue Kazoo
The Blue
podcast,
Kazoo.
keep an eye out, folks, because that podcast coming soon to you, the Blue Kazoo podcast.
I really want to make a podcast called the Blue Kazoo. Oh, God.
I don't think we'll get many hits because it's very weird to search for, but...
what even is a kazoo?
Blue...
Is that the kind of thing that makes a weird noise?
That's our intro as well.
Yeah. Somebody playing one. We never get listeners. That's an annoying intro. Anyway. Casting director Rick Milliken was tasked with finding an actress to play Pam, the would-be bank robber's girlfriend. Milliken expressed the difficulty in casting the role. You had to feel sorry for this woman's terrible, unbelievable plight. Basically, she's trapped in a living hell without at any time thinking she's insane. The role eventually went to actress Carrie Hamilton. This was one of Hamilton's final TV roles as she died from cancer 3 years later at the age of 38. Yeah.
She did a really good job as well.
I had to look what she's in because she looked really familiar. And she's in like Fame and stuff like that, the TV show Fame.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder why she wasn't in anything else. And I saw that, she died in like 2002. And I was
That's
like,
a shame,
that sucks. It's just, yeah. Director Kim Manners, realizing the monotony of some of the scenes, such as Mulder waking up after each successive explosion, attempted to make each shot interesting by incorporating new camera angles so the final episode would be visually appealing and hold the viewer's attention. Again, another one of those things where I think if you look at it every time, it's only Ned saying that, where every time they do the wake up shot and it's all from a different angle, like a different way of shooting it. So yeah, there's stuff like that you can take from the production as well. First assistant director Bruce Carter examined the script and created a complex timeline to make shooting easier. This process alone took up to 2 weeks, but Carter considered it a success. It was one of the things I was proudest of all year, is what he said.
Yeah.
I imagine, yeah. It sounds like it'd be an easy shoot. Not an easy shoot in terms of
the prep work that needs to go into it.
There's a lot of prep work, but once you've done all that, it's kind of like, well, we do all the scenes in Mulder's bedroom, we do all the scenes in the X-Files office, we do all the scenes in the bank, and then you're done, I guess. You know what I mean? Long days, but I guess the set scouting people were like, God, they off on this one. During the hold-up scenes taking place outside the bank, a 4-block area was blocked off by police to allow film crews ample space to work. Manners used 11 cameras during the portion of filming, and some accidentally made it onto the film. These were later erased during post-production. When filming, the police cruisers parked outside the bank were all turned off as the combined noise of the cars would drown out dialogue.
Okay.
The episode makes use... One of the prop notes in this I'll go into, but it's just a weird one to elaborate. But anyway. The episode made use of a number of props, with the waterbed, which was purchased by Morris Fletcher in Dreamland, in the earlier episode Dreamland, proved to be the hardest prop to locate. Stepek had to order this bed from a specialized furniture store in San Francisco.
Whatever happened to waterbeds?
I've never even seen or been on a waterbed, you know what I mean?
I remember they was like massive when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I always wanted a waterbed when I was a kid.
You heard about it a lot in the 90s, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a very 90s thing.
Do you know what?
Now it's just not a thing at all.
Memory foam is the new waterbed.
It's the new waterbed, yeah.
It's not as cool, is it?
No.
I got my bed filled with water. I've got my bed filled with foam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait for 20 years' time with the Blue Kazoo mattresses.
It's made of spikes. That's the twist. Mulder's paycheck and envelope were created after several calls to the J. Edgar Hoover building. The checks were made to be as realistic as possible without looking too convincing. That was one where it's like, they need a check.
I didn't look at the check at all, so I think they've gone to way too much effort there.
It's one of those where it's like, I guess they would need a check that is like an FBI paycheck, but also, you don't want to make something that somebody can forge.
I mean, yeah, but also, if I'm making that show, I'm definitely the lazy guy that just gets a check and writes FBI on top.
Just in biro.
Yeah.
Defo FBI.
Big block letters.
Yeah. And finally, when it came time to apply Hamilton's makeup, lead makeup designer Cherry Montesanto Mikarth applied mascara under the actress's eyes and then smudged it to give her a haunted look. Pam's stringy and multi-hued hair was Hamilton's creation, and Dina Green, the hair department, was tasked with creating an exact wig replica to be worn by Hamilton's stunt double.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
It stinks.
Welcome to the Critic Files.
I think I'm going to go big on this one. It's not Two Fathers, One Son's level of like importance.
Yeah.
But I definitely did enjoy it. I just don't think it had like the sort of the weight to it. I'd say, I'm close to giving it a 9, to be honest. Maybe somewhere between an 8.5 and a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good episode. Really enjoyed it.
If I held a gun to your head, what would you say? Please put that gun down.
Yeah, please stop. For rewatch value, I think this is a great one to just rewatch. If I've ever fancied watching an episode of the X-Files, this would definitely be up there as one of the ones I would pick.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go for a 9. I'm gonna be positive. I'd give it a 9.
I went for an 8.5. I did give it an 8 initially, but talking over it, I've just upped it a 5 because there's a lot to it, that I didn't think about, and there's a lot to it, but that's involved. With 3,749 votes, the general public gave it a 8.9.
Ooh, bloody hell.
Fairly high. No awards on this one, so yeah. Which is strange because it seems like one that would get awards.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the end of the episode. So, if you want to get in touch with the show, if you got any thoughts or questions about this episode, get in touch with us on our Twitter, email. Any of the stuff below the podcast notes. Next week, we're looking at an episode which
I forgot the title of this.
Yeah. This one was called Monday X-Files. The on-air admin here. So professional. The next episode is entitled Arcadia. Arcadia. So, that could be about heaven, could be about arcades. Who knows?
It has to be one or the other.
One of the two. Maybe it's an angel in an arcade.
That would be great. I'd watch that.
I don't know what the story would be, but I guess, yeah. Any closing thoughts for this week?
No, not particularly. I was gonna do a bit. I was gonna start the episode again.
I was thinking the same thing.
Honestly, I think it's so transparent. People see right through it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a low hanging fruit, and we're above that.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to most. Goodbye, folks.